So today we're going to be making everything bagels, or any type of bagels that you want. First you get the flour and put it in. After you get the flour, you get a teaspoon of salt and add it. Just want to add that I did double this recipe here, so in the description link down below I will actually have the written recipe so you can use it if you like. After I put the salt, I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of sugar. Once I add that in, I'm gonna mix it in very well and incorporate it into the flour. And then once that's incorporated well, I'll make a funnel in the center of the flour. And here I will add in my instant yeast. Again, I doubled the recipe, so I'm gonna be using 2 packs here. I prefer to use the packs because the packs come pre-measured out to the size or the exact amount that I need, and it's just more convenient, easier for storaging. But if you want to use the one that comes in the jar, that's perfectly fine as well. Again, I will have the recipe in the description link below so you know how much to measure out. After I add the instant yeast, I will then add in my water. The cup wasn't big enough, so I'm going to be using 2 of these cups. Then after I add in the water, I will next add in the oil. I use here extra virgin oil because that's just what I like, and it's good on my budget for the store that I buy it from. However, I'm pretty sure any oil that you use will work perfectly fine as well in the recipe. So if you don't have the virgin oil, feel free to use whatever you do have. After I add in the oil, you will then see me mix in the wet ingredients with the remainder of the dry ingredients. Again, I am doubling the recipe, so that's why it probably might seem like a lot of oil. After I add them, you see me here mixing it. I really just mix until all of the flour is coated and wet with the wet ingredients. I will then, after I get it to my liking, set a timer for 10 minutes because the next step is it will be covering your surface with flour, and you will be kneading the dough for 10 straight minutes consecutively. This will help get out any air bubbles and to help activate the yeast in the dough. So just want to make sure your surface is floured well so it's not too much sticking, and then you just begin kneading for 10 minutes. And you just knead until the dough becomes smooth and elastic-like, as you will see near the end. So as you can see, the dough is more elastic-like and it's more smooth looking. So once you finish for 10 minutes, you then will put the dough into a nice little bowl. It doesn't have to be perfect, just enough to make everything neat and compacted together. Then I'll take some more of the oil, just a little tiny bit, just enough to cover the surface, because we will then put it into a bowl to let it rise and rest for 30 minutes. I will be using the same bowl that I used to mix the ingredients in, just for the sake of having less cleaning to do. However, if you do prefer, you can get a new bowl. And I do flour the bottom just to be safe and prevent it from sticking. Then I will cover it with plastic wrap, but if you want, you can also cover it with a damp towel. And again, it doesn't have to be on tight, just a nice loose covering is fine. And you will let that rest for 30 minutes. Once it has risen and rested for 30 minutes, you remove the covering and then pinch the dough for any releases of gas. Then move the bowl aside and cover that with flour, or the surface with flour, sorry. because next step is I'm not really gonna knead it again, but I will be cutting it into the portions size that I need for the actual bagels itself. I will roll it in the flour that's on the surface counter for a quick second, just so that way when I am cutting it into pieces, it's not really sticking. But I will then stretch it into a log type shape, and then I will begin cutting it into the desired size that I want for my bagel. Now I am doubling the recipe, so this batch will make me at least 16, a little bit more, but a single batch should make you about 8. So right now I'm just cutting them up into just big pieces, and once I've separated it, I will then go back and cut it in half like I am doing here. Once I finish cutting all of those pieces in half, I will then go and make sure they're about the same size, and then begin rolling them into balls. Doesn't have to be perfect or tight, just just a scoop cup and push them into a circle sphere. Once I have completed doing the sphere for all of that, I will then be placing the spheres of dough onto a tray. So before I put the dough on the tray, I will get some oil and oil up the tray like you see me doing here. This is just so that way it doesn't stick, because this will be the same tray that I use to put it on and in the oven with. But before I do that, I'm going to place them all on here, even spaced apart, and then I will cover them up once I have them all on the tray and let them rest for about 10 minutes. Again, it doesn't have to be a tight fixing. I just like to have them all covered, so that way that the dough doesn't dry out, and this will let it rise a little bit more as well. Again, I'm using plastic wrap. However, if you choose to use a damp cloth, that will work perfectly fine as well. After the dough has sat for 10 minutes, I will then take my finger, poke a hole in the middle, and then stretch it out into the shape of an actual bagel. And I will continue this process for all of the remaining pieces of dough. Whilst my dough is resting for 10 minutes, I did go ahead and set the oven at 425 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I also set the pot on a stove with water and waited for that to boil, as well as prep my seasoning toppings for the bagel. And again, this is my everything seeds bagel. You could sprinkle it on top, but I find it's more conservative and easier to just place it in a pan and then press it into the bagel. After that has been rested and the water has begun to boil, I will then place my bagels into the water for about no more than a minute. After 30 seconds, I will flip it over and let it boil on the other side. This process just helps give it the chewy, elastic-y texture that you like when you have a bagel. So I will repeat this process for the whole thing, again flipping over at halfway. After the rest of the 30 seconds, I will take it out and put it on the cooling rack just to get any excess water off of it, and continue to repeat the process for the rest of the remaining bagels. We're going to just be careful not to overcrowd the bagels. That's why I only do 2 at a time, because this is the biggest pot I have. But if you have a bigger pot, feel free to do more than 2. It will save you up a lot of time. After the bagels are done and dried with the excess water, I take extra water, put it on top, and then place them inside and press in the everything seasonings and place it all on a tray. Once I place it on the tray, I will put it in the oven for no more than 20 minutes until it's golden brown. After 20 minutes, I will take out the bagels and take them off the tray and set them aside on a cooling rack. And there you have it, your bagels, perfectly soft and delicious. Thank you for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.